Cyclone Jasper back up to Category 2 status as it begins its final approach and further intensification on approach to landfall in far north Queensland. Jasper is back intensifying at this time, the Bureau of Meteorology having officially upgraded it to Category 2 status, and you can see, as on the satellite imagery and later on the radar imagery, this cyclone is looking much more impressive, and it is a menacing picture now for far north Queensland, where we'll be seeing a strong Category 2 cyclone pass over the coastline north of Cairns and south of Cooktown Wednesday afternoon tomorrow, where we'll likely be seeing a significant impact. If this is the latest from Force 13 Australia, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing and tell us how we can improve in the comment section down below. So Cyclone Jasper, the Bureau of Meteorology forecast cone, Category 2 status. Those winds going to be extending over the northern side of the storm over the coming 12 hours before a landfall at about 1 p.m. tomorrow is expected local time. There's a cyclone warning in effect from Lucinda up to Cape Flattery and a cyclone watch from Cape Melville inland to Georgetown and down to Lucinda again. You can see it's a Category 2 strength system. Winds of 100 kilometers an hour, gusting to 140 kilometers an hour. That is strongly supported by surface observations. Some of the reefs around the center of the system getting wind gusts up above the 100 kilometer an hour mark at this time. So here's a look at the model diagnostics for Cyclone Jasper and the Bureau of Meteorology forecast cones on the right-hand side of your screen. On the left side of your screen, rather, you can see a landfall just north of Port Douglas and Cape Tribulation tomorrow as a Category 2 strength cyclone at about 1 p.m. Local time before it moves into the Gulf of Carpentaria as a tropical low sort of around Friday morning. The cyclone expected to strengthen a little bit more as wind shear drops and sea surface temperatures increase. The amount of strengthening that it can do is going to be dependent on how close it gets to land. It's probably got about 12 hours left of solid strengthening conditions until it will have to start to hold intensity as it begins its landfall process. So you can see it's expected to pass over the Queensland coast and far north Queensland as a Category 2 cyclone. Winds probably will be 120 kilometers an hour sustained, gusting to 175. There's a cyclone warning from Cape Flattery to Townsville, not including Townsville, extending inland to Chillagoe, including Innisfail, Tully and Cairns, and a cyclone watch from Cape Melville to Cape Flattery, extending inland to Palmerville, or to include Palmerville rather. And you can see later on the cyclone is expected to move into the Gulf of Carpentaria, where the long range forecast, which we'll get to a little bit later on in the video, becomes a lot more uncertain. Here's a look at the ECMWF 10 meter wind runs from this cyclone, mainly looking at it for the next 24 hours. You can see it becomes a strong cyclone, Category 2 status, as it moves through the far north Queensland, just north of Cairns, before moving into the Gulf of Carpentaria and substantially strengthening there as well, up to probably Category 2 status as well, before it moves over Kakadu, rolling that back and playing it through again later on in the run. You can see moving north of Mornington Island before a landfall on Groot Island, but again, that is long range at this time, and there is a lot of uncertainty with that forecast. Here's a look at the Access G3, the Bureau of Meteorology's own forecast model. You can see they're calling for much more strengthening, actually up towards severe tropical cyclone status before making landfall on Cooktown, moving inland through the Cape York Peninsula and dumping incredible rainfall totals up to 500 millimeters expected in multiple locations between Cairns and Cooktown as this cyclone makes passage. The Access G3 has been really bullish regarding rainfall, calling for isolated spots to pick up to 750 millimeters just outside of Cape Douglas in the more mountainous terrain around there, and up into the tablelands as well, those central highlands. We could be seeing some pretty substantial rainfall totals there as well, so watch out for flash flooding as a result of this cyclone. I'm going to zoom right into Cairns right now, and you can see the GFS 10 meter wind runs, the landfall view, with that cursor positioned over Cairns. Now winds will likely be substantially stronger than this because the GFS is a low resolution model, meaning it won't get a full scope of the picture. However, you can see and expect winds sustained up to 70 knots as this cyclone moves through. It'll make landfall north of Port Douglas at this time. And again, a really serious storm threat, that's for sure. Here's a look at the rainfall total, the rainfall accumulation. This is in inches, however, so you can see Cairns expecting 20 inches of rainfall, up to 500 millimeters that is. And then some of the more mountainous terrain around Cairns could see even more rainfall, up to 750 millimeters in places. Innisfail expecting 250 millimeters, and down towards Townsville, maybe a further 100 millimeters. So here's a look at the satellite imagery and rain radar from this cyclone. You can see the eye starting to really come out just the northeast of Holmes Reef at this time and the southeast of Bougainville Reef. You can see on the satellite imagery it's looking far more impressive at this time. It's blown up some substantial amounts of convection, really rotating quite nicely. It has since lost a little bit of that convection, but still looking pretty good, that's for sure. Let's go and take a look at the forecast models over at windy.com. So starting it off here with the radar imagery, courtesy of windy.com, you can see the cyclone here defined by these rain bands wrapping around the system. The eye of the system is probably about here right now. This is Bougainville Reef. It's directly northwest of the cyclone at this point, or the cyclone center, and it's likely to come into the eye walls of the system very soon. You can see the banding features just outside of the storm. They're now just starting to move through Cairns. So at the time of recording, which is about 5 p.m. local time, there's some heavy rainfall about to move into Cairns and Atherton and some of the adjacent communities. That'll extend further up the coast to Port Douglas and Wudjil. And you can see up towards the Cape York Peninsula, there is a lot of thunderstorm activity over there. But if you were to take a look at the weather observations down here, Holmes Reef, sustained winds 42 knots. That's about 90 kilometers an hour from the 10 minutes sustained. So some pretty strong winds down here as this cyclone moves through. If we were to take a look at satellite imagery, the visible source, you can see the center of the cyclone, yep, right there, and the banding features of this storm moving around the system at this time, looking pretty, that's for sure. An intense thunderstorm's just starting to wrap up around the eastern side of the system and then into the southern side. I imagine when Holmes Reef gets under these thunderstorms down here, these winds will jump up quite substantially. This is Willis Island. Oh no, this is Willis Island over here, and a couple of ships moving through the area there. You can see those very pretty thunderstorms towards the west of the system and some beautiful outflow towards the eastern side of the system. So overall, it's a pretty photogenic Category 2 strength cyclone. It's moving a little bit further north than we originally expected. In fact, it looks like a direct hit on Cooktown might be possible with the latest looks on the satellite imagery at this time, which is overall very good news, that's for sure. Most of the forecast models thought that he'd be moving towards the west by now. However, it's ended up a lot further north than what we expected, and the later it makes this westerly turn, the better the scenario will be for Cairns. And it looks like right now we're going to be seeing the cyclone pass over Wudjil. And in fact, the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast model has just gotten onto that scenario with their latest forecast run, calling for a landfall on Wudjil. Wudjil is what looks like an approaching severe tropical cyclone up towards Category 2 status. Sustained winds of around 130 kilometers an hour, probably about Wednesday afternoon into evening, so around sunset time it'll be making landfall just south of Cooktown, still driving cyclone conditions between Wudjil and Cairns ashore, which will also mean that there's probably going to be a significant storm tide expected in Cairns tomorrow morning and into tomorrow evening. We'll likely be seeing this storm tide approach 2 meters above the highest tide mark, which could cause some pretty serious coastal flooding. So stick around to the end of the video and I will give you a checklist on what to do to prepare for this cyclone. One thing's for sure though, cyclone preparations should be getting rushed to completion. They should definitely be done by tonight, because it will definitely be too rough tomorrow morning to do any form of meaningful cyclone preventative measures as this cyclone makes its final approach to the Queensland coastline. So here's a look at the Access G3 model run. You can see that's a bit of a glitch there. It's calling for snow just south of Bougainville Reef, so probably not the most reliable model to look at regarding the forecast. However, you can see the cyclone making landfall, tremendous amounts of rainfall expected to materialise from about this evening into early Wednesday morning. We'll be seeing 3-hour rainfall totals approach the 50 to 75 millimetre mark, with the Bureau of Meteorology warning 6-hourly totals could approach the 150 millimetre threshold, anywhere between Cairns and Cooktown. You can see in the centre of the cyclone they could be substantially higher than that. So wherever this cyclone's destructive core passes through, we'll be seeing some very significant rainfall totals. Look at that, up to 173 millimetres expected over Wudjil, and I believe rainfall accumulation matches that, with 3-day totals approaching the 700 to 800 millimetre mark, in line with what the Bureau of Meteorology is expecting. So flash flooding and major flooding is definitely possible throughout the Queensland far north. So yeah, a significant rainmaker, a significant wind threat, and a significant wave and tidal force threat as this cyclone moves towards the Queensland coastline. We can take a look at another forecast model at this time. The GFS has been pretty reliable with this system, however still calling for this landfall on Port Douglas, which is quite far south, especially considering that the storm is currently positioned up here. It'll have to take a dive towards the southwest, which is probably not going to happen at this time unless it wobbles significantly. So I'd say there's a bit of good news for Cairns in this forecast, considering that the cyclone is not going to make a direct hit on the town anymore, and it's probably not even going to make a close pass, making landfall maybe 100 to 150 kilometres towards the north of Cairns, which is very good news indeed. Still, however, cyclone conditions expected to materialise over Cairns with the passage of this system, so you can't be taking this storm lightly, that's for sure, and it certainly isn't over until probably about Thursday morning, when we'll start to see the full scope of the potential damages that this cyclone could bring ashore. Wave heights will probably be approaching the 5 metre mark, that's 15 feet, so significant waves expected. So any coastal communities between sort of Innisfail up towards Cooktown could be seeing some very significant wave heights. Even down towards Cardwell could be seeing a storm tide from this system, and we can't be ruling out a higher than normal high tide for Townsville tonight and into tomorrow morning. I believe high tide tomorrow morning is at 9 a.m. and then there'll be the secondary high tide 12 hours later at about 9 p.m, which I don't think will be as high as the initial high tide. We'll be getting plenty more coverage on this system across this channel as well, so make sure you are subscribed, and while you're at it, you might as well leave a like on the video. So we're going to take a look at the long-range forecast right now. The Access G3 model is the only one that's really gone long-range with this system. All the other forecast models kill it off over the Cape York Peninsula, which is not likely to happen. The Bureau of Meteorology expecting this to move into the Gulf of Carpentaria as a tropical low sometime Friday, and then Saturday it will probably start to strengthen quite significantly again. Now, it'll then move over sort of Kakadu region, then up towards Melville Island here. It might become a cyclone again, but if it does, it'll be over open water, so it won't be any threat to Darwin. And then going really long range, sort of beyond 7 days, we're seeing some forecast models bringing the cyclone ashore in the Kimberley region of Western Australia around Christmas time. So still a very long way out, and there's a lot that could change with this forecast. We'll be watching it really closely, that's for sure. But one thing's for sure, most forecast models are not killing off Jasper after it crosses the Cape York Peninsula. So we're going to have to be watching this system very closely, because it looks like it's going to be a long tracking cyclone, which is a worry indeed, especially considering the time of the year. It could definitely be screwing up some people's Christmas plans as it approaches the Kimberley region of WA, which is looking possible, and in fact it's a scenario supported by a lot of forecast models, but we'll be getting to that in the coming couple of days on the Force 13 Australia channel. So once again, make sure you are subscribed for more updates on this system. I'm going to finish it up here with a look at the radar imagery around the centre of the cyclone. You can see heavy rainfall towards the eastern side of the system, so the back end of the system looks to be the strongest side, so anywhere south or towards the east of the cyclone's landfall will definitely be getting the worst conditions from this storm. So the back end of the cyclone, meaning if you do find yourself in a southern area of calm tomorrow afternoon, you're probably in the eye of the system, especially if you live between Cooktown and Wudjil or down to Port Douglas, inclusive of those locations. You could definitely be in the eye of the cyclone, so make sure you are staying safe and don't venture out until the official all clear has been given. That's the latest from us. We'll finish the video with a checklist on what to prepare. Make sure you're rushing your preparations to completion, and expect a landfall from a high-end Category 2 strength tropical cyclone. But that's the latest from us, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.
Thank you for watching our content this update. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to get more updates covering all things weather and geophysics impacting Australia and the Oceania region. Subscribe to our other channels for more content from across the network, and be sure to check out our website where you can find free access to floater and radar imagery and articles on everything weather and much more. If you wish to support us directly, you can purchase some of our merchandise. We have a wide variety of clothing and homeware, or you could become an Ultimate Fan, which is the best way to directly support us, granting you some sweet perks and offers, including features in our custom storm animations, live streams, and much more.